Hi, and welcome to another live broadcast in the Authentic Married Woman. I am your host, Karen Seitz, and I am a coach and a mentor for married women. I teach married women how to regain their sense of self, identity, and how to find their happiness within as a way to solve the issues in their marriage. And that's exactly what I'm going to be diving into today and talking about. So, the title of our video today is Why Working on Your Marriage is a surefire way to fail. And I know that can sound kind of crazy. Like, what do you mean working on my marriage? That's exactly what I need to work on. But I'm actually going to show you something deeper of where you need to begin to actually put your focus and where you need to begin to work on yourself as a way to see changes and improvement in your marriage. So that's where we're going today. And before I dive into the topic and all the wonderful things I have to share with you, I want to do just a quick review for our new members and even for those of you who've been around for a while, just giving you a reminder of the three principles that are the framework for our group and the framework for what we teach here at a New Life Center. And the first principle is that you are responsible for your happiness, that there is nothing that anyone can do or anything can do to make you happy, that the happiness is an inside job and something that you have to cultivate within yourself. The second principle is that the only person you have any control over to change is yourself, that you can't change your husband. And that's a big reason why I wanted to come on and talk about how working on your marriage doesn't really work, because you can't change your husband and you can't change people and things outside of yourself. That if you want to experience change in your life and you want to experience change in your marriage, it has to start with you. The third principle of our is that being an authentic married woman or an authentic woman, period, is about having a relationship with yourself, feeling good about who you are, and then being able to bring who you are already whole and complete into your marriage. So I'm going to kind of weave through what we're talking about today through those principles because it all really applies. If you can hear in the three principles that create that framework, there's nothing about working on your marriage or focusing on your husband. It all starts with you. So the myth that I kind of want to break apart today, and help you see a new perspective and a new side of things is that the myth is that both you and your husband need to be working on your marriage together. And what I have found in my own marriage and in working with other women is that that's a trap. Then when we're both trying to work on things together, what that actually fosters is a codependent relationship where the focus becomes on, say, here's your husband and here's you, that you need your husband to do certain things to make you happy in the relationship, to make things move forward, and that here's yourself and you need to learn to do the things that help your husband feel respected and cared for. And what happens in that situation is we become enmeshed and we become entangled. We begin to change who we are and start to accommodate who we are for the other person. And that becomes what we call a band-aid approach to a marriage, is being who you think you need to be for things to be better and putting the expectation on your husband to be who you think he needs to be for things to be better. And then the real issues never get solved. And the real issues that we have to focus on are actually within ourselves, that we have to look at ourselves and recognize that our marriage is a mirror of the relationship that we have with ourselves. And that's what we're going to be diving into. So I thought I would begin by just sharing some of the work that I've had to look at in myself and some of the work that we've done over the years with other women to really tease apart why, as women, why do we want to work on the marriage instead of ourselves? And so as I go through this is a really important reminder as you're in the group and participating in the group and you're watching these videos, that it's really important that you try to see yourself and what I'm sharing with you. Not to beat yourself up, not to make yourself wrong, not because there's something wrong with you or that you're a bad person, but that these are the unconscious behaviors that are going on and happening beneath the surface that we never shine the light on, that we're never able to see. And if we're never able to see them, then we can't change them. So the message I'm sharing with you, the things that I'm sharing with you, are for you to know what you have control over to change within yourself that can directly impact your relationship and directly impact your marriage and the direction that it's going. And you can never know until you start to change these things within yourself what might happen in your marriage and how your husband might start to respond to you. It's also a good reminder to know who I'm here to teach and who I'm here to serve are women who know that they have their walls up and that they can push their men away and that they are with good men. Because here's the thing, ladies, if you work on yourself and you change these things with yourself and you learn to drop your walls and you are with a good man, a man who you married, who you saw as hardworking, trustworthy, responsible, good intentions at heart, it doesn't mean that he's perfect, but that when you married him, he was those things. That's the man that you married. And over the years, on the other side of you potentially having your walls up, he's maybe retreated from the relationship or he's been reacting and defending himself. And when you are able to drop your walls and you are with a good man, he will respond and react and show up completely different. And that's why we're sharing these things with you, that if you can see these things within yourself, then you have a place to step forward from. And you have a way to look at yourself in the right ways to make the changes in yourself that can make all the difference in your marriage and all the difference in your life. So, all that to be said, so that as I go through this list, you can try to see yourself and see if you relate to these things, even if it's just a small part of you. But if you can see this in yourself, then you never know what could change if you start to work on this in yourself and let these things go in you. So again, so what we're looking at is why as women do we want to work on the marriage, get so focused on the marriage instead of working on ourselves? And these are things I've had to see in myself. These are things I see time and time again in working with other women. The first one is I want something else to be the problem rather than me. It's very vulnerable to see the ways in which we might be the problem. And so it's a lot easier, we think, unconsciously, or maybe sometimes consciously, we think it's a lot easier to make the problem something other than ourselves. So we make the problem our husband, or we make the problem our in-laws, or we make the problem the communication, when really what we need to do is look at ourselves. How am I showing up? Which is very vulnerable, which is why we want something else to be the problem rather than ourselves. The second reason is I don't want to be the one to change. Again, that's a vulnerable process. Seeing where we need to change and then stepping in and doing that is vulnerable. So it's a lot easier to keep the focus on our husband and the things that he's not doing or the things he is doing that we think he needs to change, because then we don't have to put the hard work into ourselves to be able to change. And David and I did a video a few weeks ago on that, which I'll post in the comments afterwards, of why we don't want to be the one to change. And we really, really dive into that one. So just making a note to post that. So the third reason is I want someone to share the blame with. We've grown up in a with a viewpoint of relationships being 50-50. And we want someone else to share the blame with. And we get into this place of, well, if my husband changes, then I'll change, which traps us because then we're putting the control of our happiness outside of ourselves. We're not being in control of our happiness or realizing that It's an inside job and something we have to provide to ourselves. It's like we put ourselves in a holding pattern of, well, if he changes, I'll change. But then in the meanwhile, we're miserable and we're unhappy. So we want someone to share the blame with so that there's someone else to put it on when things don't work out. So that's the next one is I don't want my life to be on me. We want someone to share the burden of our experience with, whether that's in our marriage or somewhere else in our life. We don't want our life to be on our shoulders, all on us, of how it goes and how we experience ourselves and what we're creating. We don't want all of that on us. We want it to be on someone else, which blends into the one I shared before of wanting someone to share the blame with, because we don't want our life to be on ourselves. And the last one, why I don't want my life to be on me. If it goes wrong, then it falls on me. So a lot of times unconsciously, we don't want to be responsible for the consequences of our choices and how our marriage is turning out and how our life is turning out, because then we know the choices and decisions we made that led us exactly to where we are, and we have to take responsibility for that, which we often see as daunting and overwhelming, and we don't want to take that responsibility. So in looking at this and understanding why we want to focus on the marriage instead of just focusing on ourselves is because that's, again, it's a vulnerable process. I have to look at me. I have to step up. I have to do the work. And I have to shift my beliefs and thinking my husband needs to step up with me and work on this with me, which kind of goes to our one of our central messages that I just shared a few moments ago, that if you're with a good man, he will step up with you as you start to change. It's not like you do all this work for nothing and you don't see improvements. That if you're willing to drop these beliefs and drop this way of thinking and show up in a whole new way, and you are with a good man, he will show up in a whole new way with you, and you'll start to see all the good things and the things that you appreciate, and see the ways that he cares for you and that he does want to be there. And you start looking for those good things and the positive things, instead of when we're working on the marriage or focusing on our husband to change. A lot of times we're so wrapped up in all the things they're doing wrong, or we think they're doing wrong, and we're so wrapped up in all the things that we want them to change that we lose sight of all the good things, and we lose sight of the man that we married that we once felt so connected to. So when you can drop these beliefs, you can be a totally different person and be who you really are and know who you really are, and then begin to share that with your husband, and drop the walls of hurt and drop the walls of blame, and begin to be able to build from that place. So another thing to consider in all of this is actually personal integrity. That if this is how you're showing up, I want someone else to be the problem rather than me. I don't want to be the one to change. I want someone to share the blame with. I don't want my life to be on me. If it goes wrong, then it all falls on me. If that's the place that you're operating from, even if it's just a little bit, then you're not in integrity with yourself. You're showing up small in your life. You're showing up disempowered. You're showing up blaming others for your experience, not able to make any changes, not able to move forward in any kind of a way. And you're not being your best self. You're not being who you really are, which means then that it's an integrity issue. You want to ask yourself, who do you want to show up as? Who do you want to be in your life? Do you want to be someone who's constantly wanting to change your husband in your marriage, and constantly finding fault and constantly blaming? Or do you want to be the kind of woman who has the courage and willingness to look at herself, to look in the mirror and improve the things that you can improve, and see where you're maybe not being your best self, and where you're shorting yourself and where you're shorting your husband and your marriage? And you might also ask yourself, what kind of role model do you want to be to your children? Do you want to be the role model of where you're blaming and feeling poor me and looking for fault in everyone and everything around you, or in specifically in your husband? Or do you want to be the kind of role model for your kids that you show up and you take pride in who you are and you take responsibility for your choices and you take responsibility for your life so that you can teach them to do the same? So when we work on the marriage, again, we continue to be lost from ourselves. We're not putting the focus on ourselves. We're putting our focus on all these things outside of us that when it comes down to it, we have no control over to change. So the solution is really learning to work on yourself in the right ways with the right strategy. So I see time and time again, either women who are coming into work with me or even in comments in our group, about I am working on myself. I am putting myself first. I am doing all these things. But a lot of times, and I know this in my own experience and in my own history, in my own marriage, that a lot of times I thought I was working on myself. I thought I was focusing on myself, but it was coming more from a selfish place of like, well, I don't want to deal with this, so I'm just going to focus on me. And I wasn't doing it in a way that allowed me to grow with my husband. I was working on myself and putting myself first in a way that actually made me push him away even more, but I couldn't really recognize that. It wasn't very conscious in me until I began to apply what I'm teaching you and sharing with you, and then learning how to grow within myself in a way where I can grow with my husband and grow with the people that I care about. And that's what's really necessary. Looking at the issues in your marriage as a mirror into yourself to show you where you are out of integrity with yourself and who you are, and where you're not really showing up and being your best self. So, our marriage, again, I'm going to repeat that. It's really important and can be sometimes hard to understand, or difficult to see that the problems that you're seeing in your marriage, maybe the lack of communication, the distance, the lack of intimacy, the lack of connection, feeling unheard, feeling underappreciated, feeling ignored. All of those are actually symptoms of our relationship with ourself. They're mirroring back to us what we lack within ourself. That am I connecting with myself? Am I making myself a priority? Am I giving myself the attention that I need? Am I listening to myself? Am I supporting myself and being there for me when I need me? And if you're being honest with yourself, you might see that you're not being there for you in the way that you need, that you're not giving yourself the support and the attention and the connection that's there for you. And so your marriage is mirroring that back to you, that you're out of integrity with yourself, that you're not showing up for yourself. So that's why it doesn't work then to focus on the marriage and those issues in the marriage. In order to see if those issues can change, what we actually have to do is look at ourselves and look at the ways that we're not showing up for ourselves that our marriage is showing us. And when we can work on that, again, in the right way with the right strategy, then our marriage is going to begin to mirror something very different back to us. And we'll be able to see a reflection of our relationship with ourselves and our changes. So when we change ourselves, our marriage reflects something totally different back to us. If we're not really changing ourselves, if we're not really learning how to support ourselves and take care of ourselves and be there for ourselves, then our marriage is going to reflect that back. I remember at one point in my marriage kind of having this aha moment of realizing I didn't really understand who I was. I had gotten so enmeshed and so lost in my husband that I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't understand myself, and I would argue that I maybe never really did understand myself, and I never really did know who I was because I always put a relationship with a man before the relationship with myself. And so 4 relationships later, with being with my husband and married to my husband, it started to become very obvious to me of how can he understand me and know who I am if I'm so lost for myself and I don't understand me and know who I am and I don't know really how to be there for myself. It kind of was a wake up call of like, that makes sense. So I had to refocus and begin to work on me and begin to show up for myself in a way where I was growing with my husband and taking my walls down and beginning to let him back in. And from that place, everything shifted as I started to know who I was and I started to have that relationship with myself. I started to take my walls down and let go of all of the blame and all of the pain and hurt that I'd been carrying around from my marriage and also all those relationships before my marriage. I started to work on that and to start there. And as I did, being with a very good man, he began to step up with me. He began to show back up in the relationship, but it had to begin with me in that place. And then everything shifted. And so these are some of the things that I've experienced by taking the focus off my marriage and trying to work on my marriage and just putting the focus on myself to really build a relationship with myself, to pull the rug up, so to speak, and shine the light on all the limiting beliefs and behavior patterns that were going on with me that I hadn't dealt with and I tried to deal with, but nothing I ever tried really worked because I was not willing to be honest with myself and take full ownership and take full responsibility for those limiting beliefs, for those limiting patterns. So I had to find a way to learn to really take responsibility for myself and be in integrity with myself. And this is what I teach other women too. And so when we do that, these are the things that happen. These are the things you can look forward to within yourself by just focusing on you and working on yourself, is that you have the freedom to be who you are. When we're entangled in our relationship and entangled with our husbands and don't have a sense of identity, we don't even know who we are. So when you learn to build that relationship with yourself, to get to know who you are, to cultivate that happiness within yourself, then you have the freedom to really show up as you. You learn to untangle yourself from your marriage and learn to untangle yourself from your husband so you can be you. And from that place, what's really amazing is then you can actually accept your husband and let him be who he is without trying to change him. And that's a really, really freeing place. Another thing that happens is that instead of focusing on your issues and what's going wrong, you can focus on your dreams and what you want out of life. So before I started to build a relationship with myself and really get to know who I was so lost in my marriage and so focused on the issues and the problems going on there that there was no focus on me. I lost sight of what I wanted for myself in life. I lost sight of my dreams and possibilities of who I am and the possibilities for my life. And so as I began to take the focus off my marriage and take the focus off my husband and work on changing the only person that I can change, which is myself, then I began to have dreams again. And I saw new possibilities and new opportunities open up for me in my life that I actually had the time and the freedom to go after because I wasn't so caught up in the chaos of what was going on in my marriage. And what that also did was kind of diffuse the sense of emergency in my marriage and the emergency on the issues, to know that if I could just focus on changing me and in the ways that would feed myself and feed my marriage, that those things would begin to work themselves out. And then I was able to have dreams again. And part of what I wanted to share with this is today in this video, this is kind of a stepping out for me, or it is a stepping out, not kind of, it is. I'm going to start doing these videos on my own. I've been fortunate enough and very, very grateful to have the support of my mentors in these videos. But one of my dreams is to be able to take all of this and make it my message and make it my own, and to share it with women to empower them, to show them what they can do and to show them what they are made of and help them remember who they are and that they do have dreams and they do have things they want to achieve in their life. But if we're so caught up in the marriage and so caught up in our husbands and what they're doing to make us unhappy, we can't go after these things. So this is a vulnerable video for me today, knowing that I'm taking this on, and part of that has been because something that's very important to me is helping women and what I get to teach and the things that I get to do. And by not having all those issues in my marriage anymore, because I've been working on myself and letting my husband in, and those things have been resolved, now I am free to do the things that are really important to me and go after my dreams. And all of you can have that too. It's within all of us. We just need to change our focus and shift where we're putting all of our energy and start to put that energy back into ourselves so that we can be happy and so that we can experience positive change in our life and watch our life grow and watch our marriage grow as a result. So another benefit of changing the focus to yourself and taking it off your marriage is that you have so much more time for yourself. Instead of feeling like you give and you give and you give and you never get anything back in return. I know that feeling. I know that place. I've been there many times. When you begin to feed yourself and fill your own cup, so to speak, in ways that are empowering you and allowing you to move forward in your life, you have so much more time. You have time to do the things that are important to you. You have the time because you're making yourself the priority instead of making your marriage and your husband the priority. Not that that can't be one, but you've got to be your first priority, because if you're not feeding yourself, if you're not filling your own cup, you don't have anything left to give. So you are always going to feel empty and you're going to feel taken advantage of. And like your husband and your family are always taking from you, but no one ever gives you anything in return. From this viewpoint, you get to fill yourself and give yourself those things that you need. And then you have so much more time for your life and for your relationships and your marriage and your own dreams. So another benefit is that you move from feeling like roommates with your husband to soulmates, because you're beginning to build that intimacy with yourself. And when you do that, you begin to risk being vulnerable and showing up just as you, no matter what. And that actually builds connection and closeness and intimacy with your partner. It has to start with you. If you don't have that closeness with yourself, you can never have it with another. So when you do that for yourself, it actually, that roommate experience, feeling like roommates with your husband, begins to dissipate and you can begin to feel like soulmates again. And the last benefit that I have on here, and there's many, I just wanted to share a few with you, but from this place, you're working on your integrity with yourself. You're giving yourself new choices in your life. And from that place, because I know this is really important for a lot of you listening, is that you become a role model for your children. You become a role model to show them what it's like to be empowered, to create your life, to go after your dreams and go after your possibilities. You show them what it means to persevere and be resilient and to handle the things that life throws our way in a responsible, mature way, that we put our big girl pants on and we face the issues and we get things done and we don't wallow in blame and wallow in hurt. We move through it. And so you can be a role model for your children. And if you don't have children, then you can be a role model for yourself, that you can begin to look up to yourself and give yourself the guidance that you've always wanted somebody else to give. You become that person for yourself. And this all begins by recognizing that your marriage is a mirror into the issues you have in your relationship with yourself. So it doesn't really make any sense to work on those issues in the marriage if they're a reflection of what's going on with you. What makes sense is that you work on those issues within yourself, because you can change that and then see how that impacts your marriage and see what that reflects back to you. that's different. So again, the solution is to focus on yourself using the right strategy. And here's the thing, you can't do this for your husband. You can't do this for your marriage. You have to do it for yourself because of the kind of woman you want to be and how you want to show up. You have to do it for yourself first, and then everyone else gets the benefit. And that seems, again, kind of counterintuitive, like, because when we're working on our marriage and we're trying to fix the things there, we're doing it for our husband, or we're doing it for the marriage, or we're doing it for our kids. And what ends up happening from that place is we build a lot of resentment. So when we can do it for ourselves, to recognize we're unhappy, that we feel stuck in our lives, that maybe we feel disempowered, then we can work on these things and focus on ourselves so that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So we can focus on ourselves and do it for ourselves so there is no resentment, that it's for you. And then from that place, again, everyone else benefits. So, what I wanted to come on and talk about today, just wrapping up and summarizing, is that we've fallen for this myth that we need to work on the marriage and we need to work on it together. And I know that makes logical sense, but what I found is that doesn't work. It actually fosters a codependency, that you show up as who you think you need to be, and you put these expectations on your husband for him to show up as you think he needs to be, and vice versa. And we become enmeshed and we become entangled. So the solution is to learn to use your marriage as a mirror into the relationship that you have with yourself, and seeing where you are out of integrity with yourself so that you can rebuild you. And by rebuilding yourself in a constructive way that allows you to grow with your husband, not apart from, then your marriage will reflect something very, very different back to you. But the hard part with all of this is you have to be willing to go first and be vulnerable to see that this works. Otherwise, you'll continue to wait for your husband to change or for something else outside of you to change, and you'll continue to feel stuck and you'll continue to feel trapped. So when you can look at yourself and work on those things that are off in your relationship with yourself, then everything in your marriage will change. And that's where we have to put the focus. And when we're focusing on ourselves and building that relationship with ourselves, and fixing those issues within ourselves, then we can begin to look at those issues in our marriage. But a lot of them, I would say, in my experience, 90% of my issues fell away and became resolved in my marriage when I built integrity with myself and I built that relationship with myself. And then my husband stepped up and re-engaged in the relationship. And that's how powerful this can be. So if you're listening and you've tried all the things, you've tried all the books, you've tried therapy, you've tried couples counseling, and it's not working, and you're ready for something new, and you can see and be honest with yourself, yes, I know I'm not showing up as my best self in my marriage, and you want to see what it might be like to change you in a constructive way, in a way that actually works, to see how that can directly impact your marriage, then I can help you. So if you're interested in learning more about how this can work for you, and really diving in and getting crystal clear on your own issues, and seeing a strategy and seeing a way forward, then private message me and we'll set up a free 1 hour breakthrough call where I will help you get crystal clear on what's really going on instead of the stories that you're telling yourself, and help you come up with a step-by-step plan to turn things around and finally get you back. And when you finally get you back, then you can move forward in your marriage in ways that you never imagined possible. So you can private message me and we'll set up that time. But thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all soon. Bye.